Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. This is Britt Moore here at City Hall, calling to order the meeting of the Finance Committee for June 2nd, 2022. Here with me at City Hall is Councilman Michael Holmes and Mayor Pro Tem Monica Peters. Understand Councilman Victor Jones is on the way, but we do have a quorum, so out of respect for everyone's time, we are going to get started. The first item on our agenda today is item 2022-259. It's a contract of some Phase 3 switches for our warehouse stock. Let's see, and Tyler?
Yes.
Tyler Barrier is presenting. I'm trying to get myself all organized up here.
Now, take your time.
Welcome. Go right ahead.
So the item I have for you today is some underground three-phase switches. These are submersible types, so if you look downtown, you see an electric vault. This is what would be inside if it's a switch vault. These are switches that we normally stock, we normally use on a day-to-day basis. These are not for a specific project, just to have for warehouse stock. We have been proactive in replacing some lately, and because of long lead times and a lot of equipment, we wanted to go ahead and get some of these procured. These switches allow us to tie circuits together, isolate outages, things like that, but it's same type of equipment that we normally use, like I said, except for it's submersible. I like to bring things in, but these are about 4 or 5 feet in diameter and as tall as I am, so I didn't do it today.
Comments or questions? I know we use them. I know we need to keep them, and you mentioned how often that we are using them, but with that in mind, how many do you think were in use around the city at this time?
Currently, we probably have, now, you know, these are rated different for different spots, but we probably have, I want to say 200 to 300 various types of switches on the system currently.
So these are in and out quite regularly. Don't need to have them be ordering.
That is correct. And I did look up historically, the last time we purchased them was in 2018. We paid about $14,213 a piece. They have gone up significantly since then. These are $31,542 a piece. So,
You could have left that part off.
I'll make a note.
We replaced all of them in 2018, or we replaced?
No, that was just the last time we made an order. We've been more proactive at replacing them, not just waiting on it to go out and then replacing it. But that was part of the reason we're going ahead and getting them in stock.
Because it's got an OEM life on it, right? Like it has a kind of, you know, mean time to failure, like rotations or whatever it is that gives you guys an idea of how long it's going to last before you need to replace it. So
there's a system life. The last few that we replaced one a few weeks ago on Commerce down near Elm Street in a vault there. The switch we pulled out of there was from 1990. Really? So I mean, we got service life out of it, I would say. But
When one goes down, what is the actual ramification to the community around which it's serving? What is the effect, and when you're alerted it's down or out, how long does it take to fix it?
This being submersible, it's one that goes inside of an underground vault.
Yep.
The effect on the neighborhood would be depending on if that switch is in the open or closed position. Is it a switch that just allows us to isolate, then everything from the substation to the switch and out is off. Now, if it's one that's just an open point and it has a failure, there's no outage, but it does, you probably heard of things, you know, or seen videos of vaults that blow up. It's a pretty violent outage. It's not a pretty sight.
Right.
Interesting. Any other comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
I'll second it. There's a motion and a second to approve item 2022-259. Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Peters.
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Tyler. Next item, 2022-260, is our water and sewer maintenance emergency repair contract, and Trevor is here to
A
talk.
much older and uglier Trevor will be up
No.
here for this one.
I was just trying to get Robbie.
All right, so Trevor couldn't be with us this afternoon, so I told him I would take this for him.
Thank you, Robbie.
Yes, sir. So this is for our, actually a contract that Engineering Services helps to put together and administer for public services. We routinely use an outside contractor to supplement our efforts in making repairs to our utilities, the water and sewer mains. We did take a contract in May of '22, and bids were received. This was the second attempt to receive bids, because on the first attempt, we only received one bid, so we had to rebid it, and we did have only one bidder on the second attempt. That bidder was Brees Enterprises. That bid amount was $1.847 million. Our current contract that we have currently is just a little over $1.5 million. But this is an annual contract that will be available starting our fiscal year, July 1, and carry throughout the entire year. And the purpose of this contract, again, is to perform maintenance and work on emergency repairs on existing water and sewer utilities. These projects are identified through public services and typically include point repairs, manhole reconstruction, hydrant repairs, main breaks, replacement of deteriorating collapsed pipes, and replacement of valves and other maintenance work items. The engineering work estimate for this was just over $1.9 million. There are funds available for this contract in the 22-23 budget year, and we're recommending seeking approval and recommending that this be awarded to Brees Enterprises in the amount of $1,847,940.
Thank you, Robbie. Any questions or comments on this item?
Robbie, any history of work with Brees, or were they a new bidder?
We've been utilizing them for several years.
Okay.
Yes.
Anything else? For anyone that may be listening, Councilman Victor Jones is with us, so I'll call the vote at this time. Let's see, was there a motion and a second? I made the motion, did I not, or didn't?
Second.
I didn't hear a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-260.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Robbie will stay with us for the next item, 2022-261. That's a contract amendment.
Yes, sir. So this is for our Kersey Valley Road landfill, part of the project out there looking to relocate Kersey Valley Road. That will allow us to continue to expand our landfill. So the city council approved a engineering services contract with Withers Ravenel back in 2017 for just under $400,000 for the design, environmental assessment, project administration, permitting, and construction plans for the Kersey Valley Road realignment project. In April of 21, Amendment 1 came forward due to additional environmental assessment needs from findings of unregulated landfill material was found throughout the site that we were looking at for this road replacement. So that was amendment for just under $90,000. And then now we have, due to that amendment, those unregulated landfill items, there's been some realignment that's been done. And so for that realignment, we had to have some additional survey and then right-of-way exhibits and easement exhibits and legal descriptions so that we can purchase some properties from a few of the property owners that we're just cutting through some of their property. This amount for this additional work is $45,000. And this was not originally known because of not knowing the exact alignment of the roadway. So that's why we're coming back with this at this point. Funds are available in this current budget year, and Public Services Department is recommending approval of Amendment 2 in the amount of $45,000, which will bring this total contract price for Withers Ravenel up to $519,370.
Comments, questions? When you originally signed this agreement in y'all did, in 2017, was there a time frame on that, or was that kind of an open-ended that this would be a service provider for us as we continue to go forward?
A time frame on the design?
Yeah, a time
Yes.
frame on the contract in 2017.
So we were looking about a three-year timeframe. As we were going into this, we came upon a lot of the area. It was discovered there was a lot of unregulated fuel in those areas. So we had to kind of put the brakes on. We slowed down. We brought in some additional equipment and testing just to try to figure out what was going on. And once we got that additional information, they had to then go back to the table and do a whole complete redesign of the roadway thickness. This will be maintained by the NCDOT, so all that's having to be submitted through the state. So there's been some coordination and delays and work there as well.
All right. Thank you. There's no further comments or questions for Robbie. I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-261.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Robbie. Tell Trevor we missed him. The next item is an ordinance for fuel budget. And I think everybody could probably use one on their personal budget. But that's item 2022-263, and Mr. Stephen Howlick.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good afternoon. This is an amendment appropriating funds in the general fund and the central services fund to cover increased fuel costs for the remainder of the current fiscal year. Just a little history: when we developed the current budget, the city was paying the equivalent of about $1.61 a gallon. Now that doesn't include your federal or state gas taxes, and so that would be to the average consumer about $2.18 per gallon. As we all seen, prices have risen drastically since that time. The equivalent purchase of what we had a few weeks ago was about $4.16 a gallon. I filled up earlier today. It was about $4.29 a gallon. I think it was $4.49 across the street. We've all seen higher fuel costs. The current budgets in the general fund and the central services fund, which is where fleet services budget is, are not high enough to sustain or absorb these higher costs. And so we're asking for an appropriation of $534,000 in the general fund. And this will be covered by better than expected sales and use tax revenues we've received to date. Sales tax has been doing very well this year, and so we're able to allocate a recurring revenue for these increased costs. In the central services fund or fleet services, they purchase the inventory for all departments, and then they charge departments that. And so we're asking for an appropriation of $1,242,000 to fleet services budget. And I will note, FY23 budget discussions have been going on. We did increase fuel budgets fairly significantly. We'll be monitoring them throughout the early part of the year to see, are the current prices the new normal? Will they dip after the summer?
Yeah.
I wish I knew.
we all
We're
do.
trying to be conservative, but also, realistic within our fiscal realities.
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to that, you better go a little bit high. I know what you meant by conservative on that.
I will note that the general fund is mostly police and fire. They're the biggest fuel users. Water, sewer, electric, solid waste. You don't see them on as an amendment. We've been able to look at their year-end projections, and they can absorb the increased costs. But for the FY23 budget, we have kind of bumped them up also, knowing that they'll be paying those higher costs like all the other departments.
Right.
But we do recommend approval for this amendment at this time.
Comments, questions? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-263.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Item 2022-264, dealing with our occupancy tax, and Stephen will take that one.
Yes, sir, thank you. This amendment is to appropriate additional occupancy tax and showroom license revenues, and these revenues are passed along to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, also known as Visit High Point, and the Market Authority. For the allocation that goes to Visit High Point, we're asking for an additional $475,000 appropriation, which will again be passed through. Occupancy tax, I believe, is higher than pre-pandemic at this time, and so We collect it, pass it on to Visit High Point. For the Market Authority, we're asking for an amendment of an additional $100,000 in occupancy tax revenues, an additional $25,000 in showroom license revenues, and again, we receive those revenues and then pass them on to the Market Authority. So the net budget impact is neutral, and we would recommend approval.
Comments or questions?
So you're saying it passed on to the CVB, Visit High Point, and Market Authority, in what allocation? What organization gets what percent of that allocation? I just missed that number.
Can you ask again? I apologize.
You're saying these are pass-through funds that go to a combination of the Market Authority and CVB? Is that
Yes, sir.
correct? So how much goes to Market Authority, how much goes to CVB?
The current year's budget for Visit High Point prior to this amendment is about $1.35 million, and the Market Authority is about $400,000 in occupancy tax, and I believe it's $2 million in showroom license.
Showroom license, okay. Those are good numbers to have. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-264.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Next item, Bobby Fitzjohn will present is 2022-265. And I'm just going to let him take it from the title.
Oh, come on, you got this. So the next few items are kind of some year-end accounting fixes that we have that we need to be able to properly record. The first one on is a new standard by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's GASB 87. It's essentially requiring operating leases to be treated as debt and the use of an asset. So kind of new for us. We've generally, if we sign an operating lease, we just pay it annually. There's no balance sheet impact. There was a complicated formula to determine if something was a capital asset previously, and those would go onto the balance sheet. Now it's any operating equipment with an underlying, or any lease with an underlying asset that we have use of, or on the other side, if we're the lessor, has to be recorded on our balance sheet. This item will allow us to basically take all those open operating leases and bring them on. And then in the future, when we bring leases to you for approval, or perhaps even a year-end cleanup item, this will be a more frequent thing that you'll see every year. So there's no budget impact, really. It's just to help us to record the transaction. So the expense and the revenue that we're recording are essentially paper entries, not real.
And this change that you're having to undergo is initiated from where?
So the for-profit financial accounting standards have kind of been on this round for a while. This brings the governmental accounting standards more in line with it. The idea is that your investors, your bondholders, would have a better idea of commitments that you've made. Leases, when you don't actually end up with an asset at the end, have never typically been seen as long-term commitments. Now they're actually on our books like a bond issuance or a bank loan would be.
So this has worked its way down from regulations into your daily flow.
Into our world, yes, sir. And so it does touch across multiple funds here. It's kind of a complicated ordinance, but again, it doesn't authorize new spending or anything. It's just a way for us to be able to record those leases coming onto our books.
Any further comments or questions?
Motion approved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Councilwoman Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
That's okay.
Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-266, is dealing with opioid settlement funds.
Yes, sir. Council earlier this year approved the MOA for the opioid settlement. As you all may remember, it's about $1.3 million coming into the city over an 18-year period. The MOA does require a separate special revenue fund be set up to account for those funds. This action will set up that fund and allow us to be able to record the first payment, which we actually received on Tuesday, the $51,076. This item does not authorize the use of those funds. It doesn't designate them for any of the options that are available to be used. The guidance on that is still kind of coming out, and it's being recommended that you allow more guidance to come before a long-term strategy can be formulated. But I do want to just make sure everybody's aware, this will not authorize staff to spend these funds. It still has to come back to council with a specific use. That may come in the form of an annual budget in the future, but it does have to come back to council before it can be spent.
And I know there's going to be a list of that they're working on of how they're going to recommend that the money be spent, but which department's probably going to be in charge of dispensing the use of those funds? Do we know yet?
Yeah, probably public safety, but details are being worked out.
Okay. Anything else? Comments, questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-266.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. The next item, 2022-267, deals with our system development fees that we not too long ago worked on, and Bobby will talk about that.
Yes, sir. Council adopted system development fees in February 2021 to take effect in January of 2022. So they've really only been online for a short few months. The statutes that allow for system development fees do require that they be accounted for in a capital reserve fund. And so it's just another method to ensure compliance with state statutes on these particular revenue sources. What we'll do is, so this item will in fact create the fund. We will amend that fund annually as part of the annual budget. But it has to be, kind of initiated with this item. The Capital Reserve Fund ordinance that's in here now really identifies an expansion project that we recently funded with revenue bonds. So initially, we've just said we will utilize these fees to pay the debt service on that particular expansion. That can be amended in the future if there's a particular capital project that Public Services wishes to utilize the system development fees to fund. But it does have to be expansion. It can't be routine replacement of even a $18 million sewer outfall. So it's got to be expansion. And the purpose is to offset the cost of new development off of the everyday ratepayer.
Yeah, we had a long, expensive study done on that, and I think council will remember, and there was a pretty field chamber and discussion on this item, but it was one of the areas where, if my memory serves me correctly, we had not addressed the issue for decades the way we should have addressed it. We used the acreage and frontage fees, which not necessarily anything wrong with that, but we didn't make any adjustments over time, as some of our sister cities around us did. And we brought it up, which seemed substantial because it was making up for several decades of time, but even with that, we didn't surpass and make ourselves uncompetitive with those around us. So, any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve item 2022-267.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes. Next item, 2022-268, is something we do every time this year with Forsyth County. Bobby?
Yes, sir. So this is the order to collect property taxes for the 2022 tax year and 2021 and prior years. As you said, Forsyth County does require us to do this annually. The other counties, we have a multi-year MOU. But again, it just authorizes them to collect the taxes on our behalf within the Forsyth County boundaries.
Comments or questions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for approval. Mayor Pro Tem Peters, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Holmes?
Aye.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
Councilman Moore is an aye. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Anything else, Bobby? You've been up there a while.
That's all I have today.
That's all you got? All right. Anything else to come before before Finance Committee today? The next thing on the agenda is the discussion of our outside agency funding. And in speaking with staff and speaking with my family finance members here, the placeholders in place for those items in our proposed budget. There are several factors that making this one unique and challenging. So we are going to delay or put off, or whatever word you want to use, and me and the finance members will be getting together to discuss this, and I will make sure that it's done in time to, to get before budget. But even if it doesn't, it's not something that will stop us from pushing through with the budget. And so if no one has an objection or comment concerning that decision, and there's nothing else to come before finance, then I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for adjournment. Is there anyone on the committee opposed to adjournment? Okay, we're adjourned. Have a good